You are what I'm looking for. I know what I'm looking for.
In today's video, I'm going to be working on a clean and simple card. I've got a couple of products here. I've got the jennycarddesigns Time to Celebrate stamp and die set. This is a retired set, but I just wanted to use something from my stash. But you could use any stamp set that you want to create a similar card design to what I've got for you today. I'm also going to be using a stencil, and I've got all of my stencils stored in this 8x8 scrapbook, and I love this method of storage because I can quickly flip through and decide what I want to use for my projects. And then I've also got my sentiment binder. I have a video on my YouTube channel sharing how I created this binder and what the purpose of the binder is for. And inside I've filled it with all different types of sentiments. Now I have a bunch of stamped sentiments, and I also have printables. I have a bunch of printables on my website where you can just print them and then cut them into quarter sheets and you have a perfect inside greeting. Now I have these for birthday, I have them for thank you and sympathy, and I've also got a bunch of sentiment strips and greetings for the front of your cards. So I've got a bunch of thinking of you, you're on my mind, sympathy, things like that. And then I also have these sentiment strips that are just a variety of different types of sentiments. I've got some thank you and thinking of you and hello and I miss you, things like that. And then I also have some cheeky birthday greetings. These are fun. These are happy birthday, my dude. I hope you have an amazing day, looking good, hot stuff, things like that. And you can just cut these up and use them as a sentiment strip for the front of your card. And then for Christmas, I have a similar idea. I've got sentiment strips for Christmas. You just print them and cut them into quarters, and you've got a bunch of sentiment strips for the front of your card. I'll have those linked in the description box down below for all of the printables that I have available on my website. And then in my little storage binder here, I've got room to grow, and I've got a good start on this binder, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to use this to help me create my cards. All right, so let's get into today's project. So first up, I've got a half sheet of jennycarddesigns layering weight white cardstock, and then I have a pre-cut and scored top folding A2 size card base with the jennycarddesigns heavyweight cardstock. So first I'm going to grab my trimmer, and I have the new Tonic Studios rotary trimmer, and what a beauty this thing is. I'm going to cut my layering weight white cardstock in half here at 4 1/4. So I'll have two panels that are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. One panel will be for my background, and one panel will be for my die cutting. So I'm going to pull in the stamp set and the dies as well. And I decided, since this is a layering stamp set, I figured it would be easier to cut out the die cuts first and then stamp on top of them, just to make sure everything was in the right place. Now I went to grab my Gemini plates and they were all crazy and warped and taped, and so I decided to get some fresh plates. So I'm going to show you how I assemble my sandwich for my Gemini Junior. I have one clear plate and a plastic shim, and then I also have a magnetic shim. And then I grab a little bit of washi tape and I tape the two sides together of all the plates, making sure everything's lined up nice and straight, and then just wrap the tape around the sides. I don't like to wrap it around the top because sometimes it can catch on the wheels inside, and I just want to avoid that when putting it through my Gemini. So I just fold those pieces of tape over. And the metal shim I'll only end up using for intricate dies. And because the top and the bottom are still open, I can slide that shim in if I need it. And then I'll use one plate to cut, and I'll flip that around and use that all the way around until I need to change it out. So I just run that through my die cutting machine, and I'm going to end up cutting a few of each of these cake and banners because I want to stack the die cuts together to create some dimension. So I end up cutting that 3 times and end up with all of these pieces. Okay, so I've gone ahead and cut all of these die cuts out, and now I'm going to pull in my mini Misty. So I'm going to grab a little bit of tape runner. I think I might invest in one of those sticky mats. I feel like I end up putting tape runner on my Misty mouse pad quite often to hold die cuts in place, and I feel like a sticky mat might be really helpful. I'll think about working on that. All right, so I've got some double-sided tape here, and I've put my die cuts into my mini Misty, and now I'm going to work on the sentiment strip first. So I'm just going to peel that away from the carrier sheet, and I'll get it lined up over that die cut. And I cut out about 2 minutes of video footage with me trying to straighten out this sentiment and make it perfect. So I'll pick that up with the door of my Misty. And then I'm going to ink up with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This is my most favorite black ink. It is a pigment ink. It does take a little bit longer to dry than regular dye ink, but it stamps absolutely beautifully. So I always use VersaFine Onyx Black for my sentiments. And now I have this glass paperweight, and I've just added a furniture protector pad over it. It's just something I picked up on Amazon, and it's perfect for applying pressure to my Misty door. I have carpal tunnel in both of my hands, and it makes it really hard for me to apply pressure. My wrists really hurt. So I really love this tool for this sort of thing. So I'm just going to clean off my stamp, and I'm going to grab my tweezers because this ink might still be wet and I don't want to smudge it. So I'm just going to pick up my sentiment strip, put that aside to dry. And I'll take the stamp off the door of my Misty, put it back on the carrier sheet, and then I'm going to work on the cake. I'm going to start with the base of the cake, and I have my die cut all taped down, and just for safety measure I'm going to grab a magnet and pin down the top of my candles so that when I pick this up with the door of the Misty, it's not going to pull away and it's going to stay in the same spot. Okay, so everything's lined up beautifully, and now we're ready to go. So I'm going to use some ink cubes today. I have this little plastic container I picked up from IKEA for $2. Now, I have these Tim Holtz tins that I love. The aesthetic look of storing these in my craft room is so pretty, but I found I never used my ink cubes. So I pulled out those little plastic inserts that come in the Tim Holtz ink cube tins, and I put them in my little plastic bin. And now I have easy access to all of my ink cubes, and I can see everything very clearly, which I love. So now I'm just going to pick out a couple of colors, and I want to create an ombre effect on my cake. I want to add some really fun interest to this because my card is going to be very clean and simple. I want to really make sure that the die cut is the focal image and stands out. So I'm going to create a gradient effect using my ink cubes. And first I've got jennycarddesigns Dark Lilac, and I'm just going to ink up the bottom part of the cake or cake stand, whatever it is. It's kind of a cake stand and cake all in one. So I'm just going to ink up the bottom half, just tapping my ink cube. I'll close the door of the Misty and press, and I'll do that a couple times to build up the layers of color. And then I'm going to go to my next color, and this is Parisian Blue, and this is an Ultinew ink. And I'm just going to kind of ink up the center of my cake stand and close the door of the Misty and press. I'm going to do that a couple of times, and I'm going to try to overlap on that Jenny Lilac ink so that the colors blend together. So I'll ink that up, close the door of the Misty and press. And then I had a little dot or something, a little piece of something in there, and it kind of irritated me because it made a mark on my stamped image. So I'm going to try to fix that by wiping that away and then applying ink over that spot one more time to see if I can kind of fill it in. And it still was a little shallow. It wasn't as dark as the rest. So what I did was grab an eraser. This is a great trick because eraser is made from rubber, and stamps stamp the best when they're made out of rubber. So I just dipped my eraser into my ink pad and just dabbed that little tiny shallow spot with the ink. And there we go, all filled in beautifully. And I just wipe my eraser off on a baby wipe and then just erase a little bit, and there we go, my eraser is good as new. Okay, so now I'm going to go to another Ultinew ink, and this is called Lagoon. This is a beautiful teal color. It's really, really nice. So I'm going to ink it up a couple of times, and I did end up getting quite a harsh line in between those two colors. So I stamped it a couple of times, brought that color down into the Parisian blue, and then I'm going to come back with that Parisian blue one more time and just kind of dab it a little bit so that it'll blend into that lagoon ink. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll try a blending brush. So I dabbed that lagoon ink at the top one more time. And I just took a little circular blending brush and tried to like pounce over top and swirl it a bit. And then I was okay. I was happy with that look. I went one more time with that jennycarddesigns dark lilac and inked up the bottom of the cake stand and just to darken that purple. So now this is going to dry nice and smooth. It's going to look gorgeous when it's done. There is a little bit of harsh gradient, but it'll smooth out as it dries. I'm just going to clean off this stamp, and then the next step for this set are the candles. I was looking for the layer that was solid for the candles, but apparently this set doesn't have that. It's just outlines. So I wasn't really happy with that, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix it. But for now, we're going to stamp this. I'm going to get this lined up onto the die cut to make sure that the candles are touching the cake. I don't want them floating off into space. So I want to make sure that's lined up nice and good. Pick it up with Adore My Misty. And then I'm going to do a little bit of creative masking. I want to use the same colors that I had used for the cake stand, and I'm going to use some Post-it notes to mask off sections of those candles. So I'm going to do one candle in each color. So I had done 3 colors. I'll start with the jennycarddesigns Wild Lilac, ink up one candle, remove the Post-it note, close the door of the Misty and press. And then I just want to darken up that color a little bit. So I'll put my Post-it note back over top, close the door of the Misty and press. All right, so to do the middle candle, I'm just going to tear my Post-it note in half so that I can split it between the 2 candles and only ink up the middle candle. So I'll just tear that Post-it note and cover the left and the right candle, leaving the middle candle exposed. I'll take the Parisian blue ink and ink up that center candle, and then remove the Post-it notes, close the door of the Misty and press. And now we have the Parisian blue candle. That's super pretty. And then we'll do that one more time for the final color, and that's going to be the lagoon. And then we're going to have 3 candles with 3 different colors. The next step for this stamp set is the candle flames. So I'm just going to line these up and make sure the little wick of the flame is touching the base of the candle. I don't want them floating and looking weird. So I'm going to pick those up with Adore the Misty, and I'm going to grab 2 ink cubes, and I have one orange and one yellow. So this is marigold, and I'm going to ink up the bottom of the wick and the bottom of the flame with the marigold, and then I'll take that sunny yellow and tap that over the top of the flames and try to blend these together as best as I can. I'll close the door of the Misty and press, and now we have our beautiful candle flames. So here is where I got a little bit creative. I didn't like that the candles were white. I wanted them to be colored the same colors as my cake stand. I have this roll of mint tape from scrapbook.com, and this is great for masking. It's super low tack, but it has just enough stick to do exactly what I want. So I'm just going to cut up some pieces and carefully lay them over top of the parts that I don't want the ink to touch. So I want to make sure that I don't have any weird white space on those candles, but I also don't want ink to go in spaces that shouldn't have. I want it to be nice and clean. So I'm just cutting up some strips of that tape, and I'm going to do one candle at a time. I'm going to cover up all of the candles. I'm starting with the first one on the left. This is a lagoon color candle, and I'm just going to cover up all that white and leave this little tiny area for that candle. And I'm going to grab an ink blending brush and my lagoon ink cube, and I'll ink up my brush and just blend over top of my mint tape and color that little candle in. And this provided the exact result that I wanted. It looks so beautiful and clean, and everything ties together nicely. So once I'm done this color, we're going to switch over to the middle candle and work on the Parisian blue. And I'm just going to move that mint tape around and cover up everything but the middle candle. I'll do the same thing, ink it up with my blending brush and fill in that candle with this color. And then same thing for the dark lilac, and then we'll peel away all this mint tape and reveal the perfectly colored in candles that match the cake absolutely perfectly. I love the results here. They looked so pretty and I was super happy with them. So I'm just gonna pull this up off the MISTI, being careful because there is some adhesive behind here. So I'm just gonna gently peel that up. And now we're ready to rock and roll. We're ready to move on to the next step. So I have this silicone mat here, and I like to tape over top of it because my sticky dot runner won't stick to it and it'll only stick to the die cut. So I'm going to use that to layer up my cake. In hindsight, I wouldn't use the sticky dot runner because what I found was any little dots that were hanging over the edge ended up getting sort of gunky and weird, and I kept fussing with it to peel it away. So I would suggest liquid adhesive here or a spray glue if you have it, but definitely not tape runner. It didn't give the results I wanted, but I mean, it was okay. It worked, but I would have preferred not having sticky stuff sticking out the side of my die cuts. So I've got all of these die cuts layered up and ready to go. Now we're going to work on the backdrop for my die cuts. So I've got the jennycarddesigns Funky Flourish stencil, and I have it inside of this pocket because the last time I used it, I had pixie spray on the back of it. And this is just a low tack spray, and it's really hard to get off the stencil. So I just stuck it in this little pocket to keep it from sticking to other things. And it pops out just great. I haven't probably used this stencil in about a year, so it was easy to come out. So now I'm just going to lay that stencil right over top of my cardstock, and lucky for me, there's pixie spray on it so it sticks down to my cardstock. And I'm going to grab an ink blending brush and a light gray ink. This gray is called limestone. So I'm just going to gently ink up that background. I'm not going too harsh, but I'm just getting a nice soft background to have a nice little backdrop for my die cuts. So once that's done, I'll just put my stencil away, and now I'm going to pull in my colored cardstock paper scraps. I want to get a matte layer for in behind my background, and I was looking for a scrap cardstock that would match my cake. So I ended up choosing a color that was very close to the Lagoon ink. It kind of looks blue in camera, but it's definitely more of a teal color, like a darker teal. So I'm going to grab the jennycarddesigns double and single stitched rectangle dies. These dies are designed to layer together perfectly, so I thought this would be a nice touch, and they have a nice stitched edge on them. So I'm just going to cut a piece of that scrap cardstock and take the single stitched rectangle, which is just a little bit larger than the double stitched. I'll run that through my die cutting machine, and then I'll grab the double stitched rectangle and cut out a piece out of my stenciled background. And what I love about these die cuts is they layer together so perfectly. So I'm going to grab my card base and I'm just going to crease that fold. I'll grab my bone folder and just press down to get a nice sharp crease on my card base. And now we're going to start putting things together. I'll grab my double-sided tape. This is my favorite sticky dot liner. I love this stuff. I've been using it for years and I won't change to anything else. So I'll just apply adhesive to the stenciled background and layer that up to my teal rectangle. And we get a beautiful, light, little delicate border around that panel. And I love that so much. So we have a really nice, clean and simple, large white space around this elegant, simple little backdrop. So I've got some of these large foam squares in my drawer. These are like a Scotch, I think they were like a mounting tape for something, and I had them in my drawer forever. I figured let's use them up. So I'm gonna put those on the back of my panel, and I'll also add just a drop of liquid glue on each little square so that it gives me a little bit of an opportunity to wiggle this in place. So those foam squares are not very forgiving, so that the liquid adhesive just allows me to make sure that it's nice and straight. So I'll press that down, and there we go. Beautiful. Now, technical error, my camera shut off, and I finished adding the die cuts to the front of the card, and I didn't have that recorded. So we're not going to worry about that. We're going to keep going, and I'm going to show you the rest. So I'm grabbing my sentiment book and I'm going to pull out this set of birthday greetings from my sentiments, and I'm going to cut this panel down. This is one of my printable sentiments, and I'll have this linked in the description box for you. So we're going to grab this panel that says sending big hugs and birthday wishes your way. Enjoy today. Happy birthday. So that extra panel I'm going to pop back into my little binder here and have that for another day. So I'm going to grab the Jenny K Designs Master Layouts die set 1, and I'm going to use the larger rectangle and the smaller rectangle, and these are going to create a nice shadow layer on my inside sentiment. So I'm going to take the smaller one and cut out my inside sentiment, just get it lined up the way I want it to look. Grab a little bit of washi tape, tack that down, and run it through my die cut machine. Sometimes I find washi tape a little bit too sticky, and when I don't want it to tear my cardstock, I stick it to my clothes a couple of times just to release some of that stick. So once that's cut, I'm going to go to my teal background panel and I'll apply my washi tape and get that pinned down in place, and I'll just cut off this excess cardstock and put that back in my scrap bin. I'll run this through my die cutting machine, and then we're all done with the die cutting. I'm going to put all of my die cuts back together and put them back in my little storage bin. Before I do that, I just want to show you how I store my die cuts. I have these little small buckets, and I picked up all of these little pockets from Amazon. At one point, all of my dies were in a cupboard and I didn't really see them, so I wasn't using them. So I found that these little pockets are perfect. They allow me to flip through and kind of keep the sets of layering dies together and words together and so on. So I keep them in this little bin on a shelf, and I really love this storage method. So I'll apply my adhesive, attach these two panels together, and pop that on the inside of my card. And then everything matches beautifully. We've got that lovely teal cardstock on the inside with a beautiful birthday greeting. And what I like about this sentiment is it's not so super tiny. It's actually legible. You know, sometimes you get those inside greetings and they're so small and you can't read them. So here is my finished card. I used a couple of Jenny K Designs black pearls here. They come in this little mix of gold and silver. And then I also painted my cake with a shimmer pen, and just to give that little subtle sparkle on my card. And then that's it. This card project is complete. This was so simple and pretty, and I love the outcome of it, and it really made me have a great time going through my crafty stuff and coming up with a clean and simple card, and I really enjoyed it. So take a look through some of your stash, see if you have a die cut that you can sort of make into a simple focal element on the front of your card to create a clean and simple card. All the products that I used in today's video will be linked in the description box down below in case you decide you want to do a little bit of shopping. And if you do decide to purchase anything, I would greatly appreciate you using my links because it helps support my channel. On another note, down below the bottom of the screen there is a little super thanks button. If you decide that you want to support my channel in another way, you can click that little super thanks and support the content that I bring to you. It just helps fund me and allow me to continue doing what I'm doing. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. Coming up on screen will be a playlist of other simple card projects that I've created. I hope that you'll check those out. Have yourself a lovely day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!